Hello, this is Sara Sach with Posh Pooch Designs, and today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make a headband using chunky yarns. Now, this particular headband and also this pink one with the black is made with Red Heart reflective yarn. Now, I got a message a few weeks back and she said, last fall I bought a ton of Red Heart reflective yarns and I don't know what to do with them. I'm going to be doing a table in the fall and I want something simple that will sell. So I told her, I said, I have a headband pattern that is a ear warmer, and you can make it with the reflective yarns or you can just make it with chunky yarns, and these sell great. You can do them in school colors or just the reflective colors. And you can do it with one of the reflective colors and a chunky yarn as well. This one is the pink reflective, and then this is just a black chunky. Now these are a chunky number 5 yarns. Now also Hobby Lobby had some reflective yarns. If you want to use them for this project, you'll need to use 2 strands of the Hobby Lobby because it is a worsted weight number 4. And that's another thing. You can make this headband using 2 strands of any worsted weight yarn also. I wrote this one particularly for the Red Heart reflective yarns, and these are great for morning walks with your dogs, for a morning run, an evening bike ride, or just taking your dogs back out to go potty in the yard and you want the cars going by to see you. I also made some collars using this reflective yarn on my dog's collars so that their dog's collar can be reflected as well. I'll link that up. If you want it, you can click over there and do that. But for today, I'm going to be showing you how to make this particular ear warmer headband. Sometimes they're called a headband, sometimes they're called an ear warmer. They give you just enough warmth to keep your ears warm, but not too much heat to make you sweat. So what you're going to need to make one of these ear warmers or headbands is you're going to need your J hook, which is a 6mm. You're going to need a large-eyed needle because we're working with a chunky yarn for weaving in your ends. You'll also need a pair of scissors. And if you want to measure your own head, you can use a tape measure. Now this headband fits about a 19 to 20 inch head, which is an adult size. And in order to make it smaller, 2 of these rows are 2 inches. And I did it that way so that you would understand 1 row is 1 inch, 2 rows is 2 inches, because you need to do 2 rows at a time. And you can adjust that in that portion of the headband if you want to make it smaller or larger for that matter. All right, let's talk yarn again. Now here's our reflective yarn from Red Heart. It is a chunky number 5, and so you can use any chunky number 5 yarns. It does not have to be reflective yarn from Red Heart. You're going to need about 2 ounces of 2 colors. And I say about because you may need more or less if you adjust the size. Now, if you're going to use a worsted weight yarn, you're going to need 2 strands of 2 colors. And you'll work those together to make the chunky number 5 yarn. This one here, this pink one, the pink is the reflective yarn, and then the black is just a chunky number 5. This one is the green and the purple reflective yarn. All right, so let's grab our supplies and we'll get started. For today's demonstration, I'm going to be using the orange and green of the Red Heart reflective yarn. Now remember, you don't have to use reflective yarn. You're just going to need 2 colors of chunky number 5 or 2 colors of worsted weight number 4 using 2 strands together. I'm going to start first with my orange yarn, and we're going to begin first by making a slip knot. and then we're going to chain 10 chains. Here are my 10 chains. Now we're going to begin stitching in the second chain from the hook. This is our first chain. So we're going to begin placing single crochets in the second chain and then in the next 8 stitches or chains across. So we'll put our hook in, yarn over, pull up a loop. You'll have 2 loops on your hook. You'll yarn over and go through both of those loops. And we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each chain across. This is going to give us 9 single crochets. And the portion that we're starting on here is the back portion. Alright, so I've stitched my 9 single crochets, and I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to grab this one right here. And this is the portion that we're working on. We're going to do the 9 single crochets, and then we'll do those rows for 10 rows, and then we'll switch to our granny stitch style V stitches. Actually, they're granny stitch style, but we are stitching V stitches, and we'll stitch changing colors, and then at the end we'll go back to 9 single crochets, and then when we're finished we'll slip stitch them together to form our headband, just so that you understand how we're working. Alright, so we have stitched those 9 single crochets. We're going to chain 1, and the chain 1 does not count as a stitch. We're going to turn, and we're going to place 1 single crochet in each single crochet across. Now we have 9 single crochets because in our beginning chain, when we turned, we skipped the first chain and began stitching in the second chain from the hook. And so we should have 9 single crochets. Now always count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That tells me I missed one. Yes, I did, right here on the end. There we go, because we want 9 single crochets on each row so that we have 10 rows of single crochet. Chain 1 and turn. And like I said, we're going to have a total of 10 rows of single crochet. So we chain 1, we turn, we place 1 single crochet in each single crochet across. Chain 1 and turn. So now I have 3 rows of single crochet. I need a total of 10 rows of single crochet. So I'm going to make 7 more rows so that I have 10 rows of single crochet. I stitched 10 rows of 9 single crochets, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And now I'm going to change to the V-stitch row, and I'm also going to change colors. Now I'm not going to cut my yarn. We're going to leave that attached. Put my hook in there. I'm going to grab my new color, put it across my hook and pull that through, snug the orange one down, and then I always grab the tail of the new one also, and then we're going to chain 3. Okay, so we joined in our new yarn and we chained 3. So now we're going to turn and we're going to place 1 double crochet in the first stitch. Our chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. So now we're going to double crochet in the first stitch. So we're going to yarn over. We're going to go in that first stitch and pull up a loop. We're going to yarn over and go through the first 2 loops, yarn over and go through the second 2 loops. So now we have a chain 3 and a double crochet. This counts as our first V-stitch. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to skip the next single crochet and stitch 2 double crochets in this next stitch. We skip the next single crochet and we stitch 2 double crochets in the next stitch. And now we're going to repeat this across. Skip the next single crochet, 2 double crochets in the next stitch. So now we have 3 V-stitches. We're going to skip the next stitch and stitch 2 double crochets in the next stitch. And then the last thing we're going to do is skip the next stitch, and then in the last single crochet we're going to stitch 2 double crochets. This is going to give us 5 V-stitches. Our chain 3 and the first double crochet counted as our first V-stitch. Then we skipped 1 and did 2 double crochets across, which gave us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 V-stitches. All right, so let's chain 3 and turn. So this is the way our headband should look at this point. We chained 3, and now we're going to place a V-stitch in the space between each of these V-stitches. All right, so we just have our chain 3, and then we're going to place 2 double crochets between the first 2 V-stitches. So we're going to repeat that, 2 double crochets between the next 2 V-stitches. We'll do that again, 2 double crochets between the next 2 V-stitches. Now we're going to place 2 double crochets in the next space. And so we'll have this chain 3 here. We'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 V-stitches, and then we're going to place 1 double crochet in the top of this chain 3 that's acting as our first double crochet from the previous row. And we go ahead and chain 3, and you can see that our first row we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 V-stitches, or 2 double crochets in the same stitch, and then our next row we have a double crochet, 1, 2, 3, 4 V-stitches, and then a double crochet, which actually that's our chain 3 that counts as our double crochet. So now we're going to change back to our orange color. We want to do that before we chain 3. And we're going to put our orange over our hook and draw that through that loop, snug that down, and leave our green attached. When we're done, we're going to come down the edge and stitch single crochets so that that will be all caught up. All right, so now we're going to chain 3 with our orange. And this is the way this row should look. We changed our color. We went back to the orange, leaving our green attached. And we're going to place 1 double crochet in that space between the double crochet and the first V-stitch. So we place 1 double crochet. Oops, there we go. Now this chain 3 and this double crochet counts as our first V-stitch. And now we're going to repeat what we did on this first row. We're going to place 2 double crochets in each of these spaces between our V-stitches. So here's our next space. Two double crochets in each of those spaces across. And then we're going to place our last 2 double crochets in this space between the last V-stitch and that chain 3. And so we're back to having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 V-stitches. And this is how the pattern will work. We'll repeat 5 and then we'll go to this row like we did here where we have a double crochet on each end and 4 in the middle. Alright, so let's do another one like that. Let's chain 3. We're going to turn and we're going to place a V-stitch in each of these spaces between and then this last one. So we'll have 4 V-stitches or 4 sets of 2 double crochets. 1, 2. There we go. I got caught on a string. And it's easy to do with these reflective yarns because it's got a little line of reflecting going through there. Alright, so we repeated what we did on this row. We chained 3, we made 1, 2, 3, 4 V-stitches or 2 double crochets in the space. And now we're going to make 1 double crochet in the top of that chain 3. Okay, don't chain 3 because we're going to change colors again. And this is how the repeat will work. On the next row, you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of 2 double crochet or 5 V-stitches. And then the next row, you'll have this chain 3, and then you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 of those V-stitches, and then you'll double crochet in the top of the chain. And this just helps us work back and forth. You'll have 5 and 4, 5 and 4 until it's the length that you want. If you make your headband according to the pattern written, you'll need to repeat this until row 28. And then we'll be going back to our single crochet. But if you want to adjust the size, like I said, these rows equal about 2 inches. A little under actually on this one. And you can adjust that according to your head measurement. Now remember, everyone crochets differently. Some crochet looser, some crochet tighter. So it's a good idea to measure the person you're going to make it for. If you're making this for a fundraiser or to sell at a craft booth, I would make some in several different sizes so that you can fit adults and children. Alright, so let's go ahead and do another set of the green just so to make sure that you understand how it works. So we're going to pull the green yarn through, we'll snug that down, hold that down and chain 3. Okay, now we're going to turn and we're going to place 1 double crochet in that space between the chain and the next V-stitch. So we just make 1. The chain 3 and this double crochet count as our first set of 2 double crochets or our first V-stitch. Now we're going to make V-stitches in all these spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 double crochets together in each of the spaces between the V-stitches. All right, one more set. 1 and 2. So we've stitched 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of 2 double crochet or 5 V-stitches. We're going to chain 3 and turn. And now we're going to place 2 double crochets in each of these 4 spaces. So we have our chain 3, we stitched 4 of the V-stitches, and now we're going to stitch 1 double crochet in the top of that chain 3. And now we're ready to change colors. Again, remember, when you're stitching rows like this and you're changing colors, we're carrying our yarn across, and then we're going to change our color before we do our chain 3. Because if we did it before, we would have that first stitch on each row be the wrong color. So go ahead and stitch your rows, alternating your colors every 2 rows and stitching those 2 rows exactly as I showed you for as long as you need it. Now I'm going to stitch up through row 28 so that it's the same size as my other ones. I have finished up through row 28. I have my first 10 rows of single crochet, then 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, and 28. So now I'm going to switch back to my orange yarn because I'm going to go back to doing my single crochets, and I'm going to clip off the green yarn. All right, so instead of chaining 3, I'm just going to chain 1. There we go. We're only going to stitch in the first 9 of the double crochets. We'll leave the last chain unstitched. So we'll have only 9 single crochets. There we go. Here's our last single crochet. And then we have the chain 3 here. We usually stitch a stitch in the top of the chain 3, but we only want 9 single crochets. So we're going to leave that one unstitched. We're going to chain 1 and turn. And now we're just going to repeat what we did here. We have 10 rows of single crochets of 9 stitches across. So we're going to turn 1 single crochet in each single crochet across. Now, if you want to use a different color, like maybe you wanted to go ahead and go with the green instead of the orange, that's totally up to you. Color choices are up to you, and so are yarn choices. All right, so there's 9 single crochets, chain 1, and turn. And it looks like I've got a knot in my yarn. So I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch 8 more rows so that I have a total of 10 rows of single crochet. Here's our first 10 rows. Then we did the center portion up through row 28, and now here's my last 10 rows. And the way we hook it together to be a headband, I chained 1, and then we're going to put the 2 ends together. We're going to go in that first one here and the first stitch on the other side and slip stitch them together. To stitch a slip stitch, you just pull the yarn through, and then that loop you just pulled through, you pull it through the loop that's already on the hook. And this is how we're going to sew the ends of our headband together. I do recommend that you stitch this portion just a little bit loose. If you stitch it too tightly, you might get just a little bit of puckering, and we want it to lay nice and even. All right, there's my last stitch. Pull that through. Cut my yarn. All right, so now we have a few strings that we need to weave in. And this is the underneath part, because here's our seam. And we need to take a few minutes and just take our needle, take those ends, put it through the eye of our needle, and weave those in. And make sure when you're weaving in, you go through a few stitches. And also stay within the yarn color if you can help it, because you don't want it to show through. And I usually go, get in there, one way, and then I turn and go back another way, and then I usually turn and go back one more way. If the yarn stays in the needle, that is. There we go. I think by going one way, then back the other. Well, let me thread that while I got that in there. There we go. Then I can just pull that through. Anyway, by weaving it in one way, then back the other, and then the other way, I think it helps it stay in place a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and take a couple minutes and weave in my ends, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to do the edging. We stitched the center together, and I weaved in all the ends, and now it's time to flip it over and do the trim. And I'm going to use the green for my trim. You can use a different color if you want to. And what I like to do is I like to join it right here on the last stitch of the single crochet. Got a spot sticking through there. All right. So we're going to join our yarn in. Like a chain 1, and I'm going to hold that piece of yarn that's underneath across and just stitch over it as I'm going. All right, so we're going to go in the end of each of these stitches and evenly stitch single crochets. Now make sure that all these edges on this side where we pulled the yarn across, that you make sure you stitch over those pieces of yarn. And this is where you might want to stitch your single crochets just a little bit tighter. Hold that down And then when you can, stitch through the end of a stitch and not a hole. Now I know sometimes that you'll need to stitch in a hole, but it's a good idea to try to get it in as many of those stitches on the ends as you can. So we're going to do this all the way around till we get back here and join. Making sure, especially on this side where we have all of our yarn that we left on there, that we try to catch all those pieces in our stitches, because we don't want any of those hanging out or getting caught on anything. Besides, we want our headband to look as neat as possible, don't we? Alrighty. So we're just going to single crochet all the way around this side, making nice and neat stitches, trying our best to keep it even. And then we'll go all the way around until we get back over here, and then we'll join and tie off, and then we'll need to do trim on the other side. The trim is done on the first side. And now we're just going to do the same thing on this other side. We're going to join our yarn in. And again, you can choose whatever color yarn that you want. Make that first initial little chain one, and then we're just going to do the exact same thing. Place a single crochet evenly across the stitches, trying to get in the stitches where possible. And of course, sometimes we will have to go in holes, and you're going to have to just eyeball it to make it even. If you put too many, it'll pucker up. If you don't put enough, it will pull. So you're going to have to just use your eyeball and kind of gauge yourself how many stitches to place and where to put them. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of the rest of the single crochets around. I finished single crocheting evenly all around this second edge, and I just wanted to show you how we join. We join right back to that first single crochet with a slip stitch and tie off, and then we just go to the back put it in our needle and just weave that end in, making sure that we stay in the same color of yarn, one way, back the other, and then back another direction. There we go. And then we'll just cut that off. So now our headband is all done. I've got a little piece there of that reflector. I'm going to cut that off too. So here's our headband. All finished. This is the green and orange one. Here's the purple and green one. And here's the pink and black one. So these are lots of fun to make, and they make great items to sell at craft bazaars and for fundraisers for schools. Make these in your school colors. You'll sell a whole bunch of them. And I know you're going to ask me, what do I sell these for? And I usually sell them for $10. You can add a pom-pom, a flower, a butterfly, or anything that you want to, or something that symbolizes your school or your favorite team, like a letter. So this pattern is a free pattern on my blog, and you can find that in the notes down underneath the video. And the name of this pattern is the Chunky Reflective Headband.